Today is a special edition of Ctrl Alt Dev. We're stopping the high-level strategy and going into the trenches. We're going to tell you in detail how we actually automated our business this week. We're talking about a difference between a quick fix hack and a proper code fix, and why your business probably needs both. We're breaking down the MCPs that bridge our Notion databases to our Google calendars. So it's less theory, more execution. This is the how-to episode you've been asking for. So welcome back to Ctrl Alt Dev. Now, regular listeners will spot immediately in the voice sitting opposite me isn't the usual one. Sean, unfortunately, has been struck down by a winter bug, so we're calling it system maintenance. So we're sending him our best and we're telling him to stay away from the microphone until he's non-contagious. But every cloud has a silver lining. Sean being away gives us a unique opportunity. For 15 episodes, we've talked about strategy, the best year ever protocol, the 10-80-10 rule, and the high-level vision of AI. But today, we're going deep into the trenches. I've invited the man who actually has to build the crazy things that myself and the team dream up. He's the head of AI operations at Green Gorilla, and he's our secret weapon. And the guy who tells me why my simple request is actually a week of coding. Let me introduce Kurt Peniket.
Hi, I'm Kurt. I've worked at GGA for almost 5 years. And yeah, as Paul said, I've been tasked with the daunting task of trying to implement the stuff that comes up with and then try and refine workflows and try and keep up with the crazy world that's AI every week.
Oh, fantastic. I think this is going to be really, really good. Kurt, I'm so excited. So today is a show and tell special. We're going to aim to give away the farm. We're going to walk listeners through exactly how we automated our own internal headaches using MCPs and tools like N8N. And let's be honest, it was getting a bit of an oxymoron that we weren't being congruent. So we were basically selling operational efficiency to other clients and prospects and businesses, but their own internal admin was still stuck. We weren't necessarily optimizing as much as we were saying. So we decided to change that and invest heavily into our own operations. So thanks for joining me today, Kurt. I'm really excited. I think we're going to kick off this episode in our new tradition, which is a listener question. And this week, we actually received a voice note from Rob Salmon, who's a videographer. So I actually looked Rob up and his business Snappy Ads. And on his website, it states, we create short, snappy video ads for your business, which generates more inquiries, more sales, and more profit. So there you go. Bit of context for everybody. And honestly, Kurt, I think this is the perfect question for us because it talks about a massive, messy data set and turning it into something useful. So here's the exact question that Rob asked. So he said, I need a way to analyze lots of meetings. We want to create an 80% video, which is a concept from Marcus Sheridan, and it addresses the most common objections leads have before they buy. He's got about 300 recorded discovery calls, so like transcriptions and audio. And how do I analyze that much data to find the top 7 to 10 questions without listening to them all? So I think this is a really, really good question and hopefully one that's common to a lot of people. So first off, for anyone who doesn't know, Marcus Sheridan and the 80% video is a sales technique where you make one video that answers 80% of questions every client asks. So you end up stop repeating yourself in meetings. But 300 recordings, Kurt, that's a lot of data. So how would you recommend Rob tackles this?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you're working on that job, if someone's given you that job to do, 300 hours, it's crazy. Those calls, like, I mean, where do you even start with it? You'd have to just go through it methodically. It's a lot of manual work, and there's no real way you can do it any quicker than you can physically work. So it's a perfect task for AI because AI is good at repetitive tasks. It can do things in parallel. But this specific question exposes two kind of important concepts that we have to deal with every day, which is to do with context window and transcription. So the AI isn't going to be looking at the video. It doesn't necessarily care what's happening in the video, but it cares about the audio. But a lot of chat models don't work with audio. They work with text. And so the challenge is converting that audio into raw text that it deals with really, really well. And then that exposes those two challenges of transcription itself, getting that text into the chat model, and then the context window as well.
Okay, and if you had the audio only, what would be a tool or a way that you would go about that?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot out on the market. I mean, a lot of the flagship models, so like a lot of companies like OpenAI and Anthropic with Claude and Chat have got their own kind of transcription models, which are really good for doing that stuff. But there's a lot of services like Fireflies or Granola that automatically do this for you. And under the hood, obviously, they're using similar sort of models, but they've got their own approach to it. But it just takes away that friction so that you can record the audio and it's automatically transcribed into just raw text, which is great for an AI to use.
Okay, so let's imagine we've achieved task one. So the first task, like you said, is to get the context, isn't it? So we've turned the audio 300 files into text, into documentation that is effectively done in a matter of minutes, really. So then the next thing is, okay, we've now got 300 transcriptions. How on earth do we get the 7 to 10 questions that Rob wants to achieve? How do we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it all comes down to really what context window, and this is an important thing with AI systems or any kind of large language model, and it's sort of how much it can keep in memory at one time. And this is a familiar concept to us, really. If you think, say, I'm telling you a shopping list, and I say you need to get eggs, bread, and milk, you can remember those things. But if I say eggs, bread, milk, cereal, and I start adding to it, at some point you're going to forget the first things I said. Now, obviously, that's a very simple example, and for me and you, we might get to like 5 or 10 items, and we've forgotten the first ones.
If I'm
for an LLM, yeah, indeed. For an LLM, it's like it's obviously more than 7 items, but it's still got a fixed context window. And what happens then is, if you get past that context window, it'll keep going, and it'll keep pretending like it's remembered it, and it'll be like, "Oh yeah, of course, I still remember your shopping list." But in reality, the internal mechanics of it'll have forgotten the initial stuff he said, which is no good if you want context and history. So you want to carefully manage that context window. So you might get these transcripts from these 300 videos and be like, great, I've got the raw text, which might be thousands or possibly millions of words. And just log on to chatgpt.com or whatever it is and just whack it into the text box and say, give me a summary. But that's not necessarily going to work, because it might give you a convincing response, but it might just only be getting the tail end. It might be trying to work out stuff from before using a best guess, which we'd call like hallucination or like making stuff up. And it won't quite get the output you want, or worse, it'll give you an output you think is right, but is actually incorrect, and you wouldn't know unless you've been through it manually yourself.
Yeah, and that's where the human, going back to 10-80-10 rule from the last episode, is about. It's the review part, isn't it? Don't take it as fact.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, because it's really interesting in the voice note, and it's something I haven't mentioned so far, but it has got context to what you've just said, is what Rob has tried to do is exactly what you just described. So he's tried to take those transcriptions and dump them into various tools like Fireflies, and he reports that it just keeps crashing. So that's exactly what you're talking about, is it can't handle either the size of data, so it crashes, or it's inaccurate, as in it's only going to look at the last 5 transcriptions rather than the whole 300. So there's obviously really, really technical, complicated ways to create memory in AI and to build out complex workflows. Is there an off-the-shelf approach that Rob could do today to achieve this task?
Yeah, absolutely. So one good way of doing a task exactly like this, where you've got lots of sources or lots of data that you want to pull in, and you want it to all kind of be one coherent thing that the LLM can use, is from Google, actually. And it's one thing that Google do really well, which I haven't really seen the competitors do as well. There's no real kind of alternative with other companies. It might just be that Google are the only ones capable of doing it. It's called Google Notebook LM. It's something we've used internally as well. And it's perfect for this exact use case, because you can upload, say, 50 documents. That could be PDFs, docs, text files, audio transcripts, and it handles them all really, really well, because they've got a great model that's designed just for this. It processes those. You could put in those as text files, as PDFs, whatever you want to. And then you can just ask it questions, and then you can have confidence that chat is pulling in that context as sort of background information. It's like talking to a person that you've already briefed on all those 300 videos, and that's going to be far more reliable than just pasting the transcript straight into a chat like Claude or ChatGPT.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So I think the file upload limit or the number of sources, it probably, I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have done more research, but there we go. There's an honest answer. It's definitely in the hundreds that you can have as sources.
We've never hit the limit, have we?
Yeah,
we've
exactly.
used it.
But I was thinking, even as a workaround, let's just say that Notebook LM was the right tool, but it only handles 50 sources. Another quick thing you can do is, and you can use AI for this, or you can use another tool, is you can take those transcripts and merge them into PDFs. So you ultimately have like one PDF that contains, say, like 10 meetings. So therefore, you only need 30 files. And you can use AI to combine documents. Chat will do that really well and things like that. So there's always a workaround today when it's struggling with large data. But it is a hack of a solution I'm suggesting. But I'm just trying to think of, like, without any technical knowledge, how you can do these workarounds. So once the data is in Notebook, it's probably worth just expanding on this question just quickly to, like, what are some of the other things you can do once the data is in there? So obviously we can prompt it. We can give an example now of like a typical prompt that we might use, but then does it do anything else? And that's a really leading question, Kurt, because you and me know it does. So
There's a load of stuff it does. So I mean, if you've never seen the interface for Notebook LM, you've got a pane on your left, which is all your sources, which in this case is all the video transcripts or whatever. In the middle, you've got a classic chat window, which we're all used to since 2023 now, when I ask questions. But on the right, there's a load of extra features. So one we use heavily is audio overview. So you think, that's just someone talking over, giving a brief overview of the sources. And it can be that. But the thing we use it for, it generates like a podcast. And you think, that's going to sound rubbish. But it actually sounds like a genuine podcast of people discussing this information. You can fine tune that prompt to say, I want to just focus on this one aspect of the sources. I want you to give me a brief. You can fine tune the length of it, and they'll steer the discussion according to that. And it's really weird because it's like having a podcast that's been made specifically for you. And that's what it is, essentially. You can even interrupt that podcast and join in the discussion, which is crazy, really. That's really useful.
How we brief the meetings now, isn't it? Like,
for sure, yeah.
We'll effectively set up a notebook. They'll import the sources, and then effectively, because I think me and you prefer audio, we'll get sent, like, here's a link to the audio podcast. And then whether we're like running or, you'll be running, I won't be running. Whether we're out and about or in the car, whatever, it's an opportunity to digest some information ahead of an important meeting, or it can be internal, external, whatever.
It might be like the way the human brain works as well. But like, I've listened to Notebook LM things you've done and meetings I haven't been on. And then I feel like I've been at the meeting because I've listened to it. And obviously I haven't been, but because it's got your transcription notes from your meeting and I've listened to that along with other sources, I feel like, I was in the room when I wasn't, which is amazing, really.
It's probably a lot more concise because I tend to rant and waffle, so like you're getting just the facts on that podcast. I think, so bringing it back to like a prompt we could use then. So if all that data is loaded as sources, Rob could say something like, analyze these 300 calls, identify the top 10 objections raised by potential clients, rank them by frequency, and for each objection, quote the exact phrasing the client used, and then expand on that into almost like video creation and scripting and all that sort of stuff. I think the other thing we haven't touched on, which I find really powerful with Notebook is, and this isn't technically accurate, but it's trained only on your sources. So it tends not to be like if you use Gemini or Chat, what you're actually doing is talking something that's internet connected by default. And that's where a lot of the hallucination comes from. It's a lot of the sources. It doesn't matter how good the AI model is. If it's reading stuff written by human beings from the last 30 years of the internet, it's going to be good and bad content. It doesn't necessarily differentiate. Whereas when you use a notebook, if you upload 10 sources, by default, when you're asking questions or you're getting an audio podcast, you're not getting like interference is how I'd describe it. It's like, it's just off the truth that you upload. So what you
end sandboxed for that one area, isn't it?
When you go back to your context window, you're constantly adding context to it. So if you imagine it knows nothing, and then all of a sudden you say, here's the last meeting note for one meeting, meeting two. But then you can add into it like, here's our website, here's our ideal customer profile. Here's our, marketing strategy. You can put as much content into it as you want to produce that. I mean, equally, you could put up a summary of Marcus Sheridan's, 80% video, or a web link actually to that, to that kind of content on the internet to bring it in. And we've done that really successfully, where we're using a notebook for a specific technical task, and then we'll link 6 or 7 sources to authority sites that we've researched that are then and you can use this knowledge because we believe it to be true. So you become a curator, don't you, really?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, to expand on your analogy, Paul, if you imagine like a normal LLM like Chat or Claude, they've got the whole internet and it's a massive library. You're just saying, I just want you to go to this one shelf of books we've written, or I just want you to stay in the history aisle and not deviate to the fantasy aisle. And you're kind of giving it a focus, which is what you want for some tasks. Honestly, some tasks you want it to research the entire internet, but for the majority of this nature we're talking about now, you want it to be really focused and have the blinders on, which is something you can do with Notebook LM.
I think, again, just touch it. I know this is like question. I knew this would happen, Kurt, because it's so easy to talk to you. But the other thing then is, so what I find myself doing with Notebook is I'll be working with Notebook and trying to come to like an action or a takeaway or something. And then I'll get it to actually create a prompt to then run in Gemini. So I'll then context switch to Gemini, and I might go and get Gemini to do the actual deep research, to then expand on something, to then do the research around, like you said, I'm now looking through the history aisle and I want to find the 3 top sources. And then once I found those, I'll then pull them back into Notebook to extend its context. So it's you can really get into I mean, it's like a more advanced technique like you're talking about, but like me and Ollie, another developer at GGI, often do this. It's called meta prompting. So you can get another model that's better at that kind of thing to prompt the other model. So you could say, in that example, take that book about what was it called? The 80 10. So the 80% video, I think, I'm not sure which book it comes from, but Marcus Sheridan's famous for that. Stu Anson, he's famous for, at the moment, it's about endless customers is his latest title. But sorry.
So you could have like, say that's the goal with that. Go away from Notebook, go into Gemini or your model of choice or Claude or whatever, upload a PDF or an article of that method. Say, I've got these 300 videos. I see them. I've got the transcripts. I see them. I've got this. Give it a full thing. I want a prompt for Notebook LM to dig out this, and then you really refine it. And LLMs know how to prompt LLMs. They know how to talk to each other, and they'll be better at writing a prompt than we will. I mean, you could go even a level higher and create the prompt for that prompt, and when it gets silly after a point, but like you end up really refining the prompt. And then that's the hard work. You're sharpening the saw before you're starting. And once you do that, you can really get dramatically different results.
Yeah. So it's the 10% planning that we talked about. To then do the 80% of the work, the grunt work, theoretically is done by AI. Of
course.
And the critical step is the 10% review. So then just one thing that's gone off in my brain as you were talking is, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts and stuff, but I found when you talk about the concept of meta prompting, like Manus AI, I know it's been acquired by Meta. We covered that in a previous episode, but I found Manus incredible for doing that deep research. And it's almost like feels agentic. It is built as agentic. So kind of you can give it a task and just go off. And, whereas people's probably assumptions or usage in a standard case is I'm using Chat or I'm using Gemini, so I'm sat in front of it. Manus is very much like, give me your prompt and then I'll go and do this. And you see it spin up a computer. It's just mad. So there's like, for deep research, what you're talking about is you could get Notebook to suggest a prompt, say Gemini or whatever. Gemini goes so far, and then you could actually take all that research into Manus and get Manus to do an even deeper dive. And this can all be done like within 5 to 10 minutes. We're not talking about half a day. And the quality of output is incredible. So I think to wrap up this, I think the other thing that I'd say with Rob's task is what you want to make sure, Rob, is in whatever you do, you're using the exact phrasing of your prospects. So what we believe Rob has is his prospects talking in their own voice about their problems. So one of the dangers I could foresee is you give that to an AI model and it tries to cleanse it. So, but then it becomes unrelatable. So I might describe my problem or my objection, in a particular way, but AI could take all those things and like hygiene clean it and go, oh, here's what they're saying. And it doesn't resonate or it doesn't land. So I think you can actually prompt it to say, use the exact phrasing that the clients are using. Let's talk to them in their language. So, as a videographer, Rob, you don't want to use your jargon in your video. You want to use your client's language. And if they say it costs too much, don't say budgetary constraints, say it costs too much. So I think that's kind of like a final thing from me. Have you got anything else to add on that, Kurt, in terms of...
just one warning, which everyone probably knows about, but GDPR and data is always a big thing, especially with the clients we deal with day to day. And there's a lot of free tools out there, but the old adage is that if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. So, always be careful about what data you're putting into a model. If you're not paying for it, you've got a pro or enterprise subscription, it's likely they're training the next generation of models on what you're putting in. So just be careful with personal stuff or any user data, really.
Yeah, so cleanse it before you import it.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So 300 hours of listening saved in 1 minute. Took us about 20 minutes to explain it, but that's okay. And that's the definition of the 1080 rule right there. 10-80-10 rule, sorry. So, yeah, thank you, Rob, for that. It was a great question. Okay, so I think let's get into the meat of the episode. I am conscious of time and stuff, but I think that was a really, really good initial discussion. I definitely feel warmed up. It's also worth saying that we're recording this pre-work, so this is I'm croaky today. So effectively, I'm really keen that we do a show and tell, Kurt, and we kind of give some real world examples of things we've done, not last 6 months, like this week. So when we're looking at our own business, and we kind of make sure that we're congruent, so we can share our kind of stories from the trenches. The one question we're constantly asking ourselves is, are we doing anything that's repetitive? Are we doing anything that's boring? And basically, is it 100% admin? And if it's yes, we either eliminate it, which is a critical step that loads of people miss, or we automate it. So we ask, why do we do this task? Rather than how do we do the task, if that makes sense. So let's start with one that we solved a massive headache for us. And it doesn't sound like a massive headache as a small team, but I think the context is it's a project manager's responsibility, and it weighs heavily on her week. It weighs heavily on her mind in terms of, is it accurate and everything else. And we're talking about holidays and overtime. So normally that would fall to a HR department, but we don't have that. we're small and lean. I also, when I was thinking about this, I was going to say in the shower, but that sounds dodgy, but that's when I did think of it, was I remember when I started my very first business that holiday and overtime and forms and stuff were paper. I remember having a box in the office of, Kurt, if you worked for me back then, you would have to fill out
a folder. Yeah.
You have to go and find how many holidays you'd taken to that point. So we operate a system at GGA where we have a contracted 35-hour week, 4 days a week. But effectively, if you go over that time, we track it and we reward it as well. So this used to be a paper thing. Then it became a Google spreadsheet, so like an Excel spreadsheet in effect. Then we migrated to a Notion database, but it was always disconnected. It was always multiple sources to go and find. So the admin task was finding the truth and the data. So, Kurt, we gave you this problem, didn't we? Erin, our project manager, came to you and she showed you the existing example, and she showed you, in other words, what a ball ache it was.
Yeah.
So what did you do? What was the problem? What was the solution? And then just, if you can expand on it, I think it'll be of value to people.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, like you said, the task that Erin had was ideal because it was clearly defined. There were steps involved, clear logical steps, which are the same every time. It was time consuming. It was boring. It was something that a person didn't necessarily need to do, maybe need to review it, but didn't need to actually manually do. So it was an ideal candidate for automation. And what Erin had, which was ideal really, was she got like a Notion doc of step by step what she does, what the output should be. She got like a table of the data. I mean, it was just perfect from my point of view as a developer, because I can just look at it and be like, oh, I understand this problem space now entirely. So the way we approached it, just as a first kind of draft, really, was we just gathered the data sources. So the problem was that the data was all in Notion, but Erin was having to go to different places. So she was going to Toggle for like hours worked for different clients and whatever. She was going to like a Google Calendar for the holidays. She was perhaps going to Messages as well to go back through history. And it was just to pull all that data together into a coherent source and do what she was doing already manually, but like with a computer instead, and to speed it up. So the way we approached this was we've got what's called an API or an MCP, which connects those data sources together. And there's a lot of like acronyms thrown around there, but essentially it's just a bridge to get data from one place to another. So if you think about, say, your Google Calendar, doesn't know anything about your Notion database. They're two separate systems. An API or an MCP is just a bridge that helps them kind of handshake together and talk to each other, essentially. So we got a Google Calendar, which had the holidays, talking to Toggle, did some logical calculations, which Erin had already essentially developed the rules and the logic for that. Just put that into code. And we've got an internal system we use, which is kind of like a test bed for a lot of these automations that we use for a lot of different things. With Zero is another API we use, a bunch of other stuff that we use just internally to process stuff. And we put it on there. And we've just been iterating over there to kind of work out the stuff that Erin automatically works out. And it's been really successful so far. We're just still fine-tuning it. It's kind of like a hacking away at it at first, which is good because it's internal, so we can do that. We have got that luxury. But already we're seeing like good, decent data from there, and hopefully going to be saving some time going forward.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things that apologies if you can hear a pen, because I've been scribbling stuff down as we go, because I think you touched on a few things. So the first thing is MCP is obviously another acronym like LLM, so large language model, and then this stands for Model Context Protocol. But like you said, that's just another word like API. The word doesn't mean anything. It's the fact it's a data bridge, and it's also secure. That's the other big thing. It's not a custom built thing. These are released by the official kind of software things to say, we want you to communicate with us, isn't it? That's what they do.
Yeah. Exactly,
so the next thing I wrote down was you mentioned Toggle. So just for the benefit of the listener, Toggle is just a time tracking tool that we use. So it's where we log all of our minutes, hours of work that we work on specific client projects. We work on billable, non-billable time. So it's any kind of time tracking system. So because we have that and we have a holidays calendar, we can stitch it all together. The other critical piece that you spoke about was probably our iteration. And it just made me think of this. I'm just sharing it. It's like the iteration we've gone on with playbooks. So about 12 months ago, the classic business has standard operating procedures, and the tradition is it's a document or it's even a file printed out somewhere for somebody to then look up and reference, but it's not really that well used 9 times out of 10. It's referenced when there's an issue. So what Kurt referred to is Erin had created like what we call a playbook. So it was the instructional manual for how to do this specific task. And it also includes like a video screen share of how to do the task, so that if anybody else needs to do the task, they know how. So that was what you were able to pick up, wasn't it, Kurt? It wasn't just here's a spreadsheet, go and reverse engineer it. It was we have an accompanying operating procedure that details exactly what the steps will be done. And that obviously fast tracks how quickly we can implement it. If you're trying to automate a process, I would always recommend reverse engineering a playbook before you start with the AI. You can use the AI to help you create the notebook, but also reverse engineer it. And
because if you can't explain it to someone else, then an AI won't understand it either. If you can't tell another person this is how we do X, then it won't understand.
Man, I am going to digress massively now, but no apologies. So our current process is, we've talked, I think, before about Granola and Whisper Flow and stuff, but my current genuine process is I will use Whisper Flow on my phone, and I will literally pace around my house like a mad person, dictating to Whisper something to get out of my head in terms of a process. I'll then take that transcription, which is like AI cleansed in terms of it gets rid of all the nonsensical stuff I'm saying. And then I'll put that into Gemini to say, right, create me a playbook for this. And then I'll obviously do the 10-80-10, so it'll spend 80% of its time doing it, but I'll be planning it and reviewing it. But then what I will do is I will create a notebook, and I will upload my playbook into the notebook, and then I'll share it with the team, and then I'll delegate it via Loom videos to say this is what we need to set up. So whether it's a new initiative or it's something we've done for donkey's years, that's our current process. And it's kind of like, it's very iterative. We always know that it's not perfect. That's the key thing, but it's better than what we already had. So we're always looking for those 1% gains. And I think in the context of this, understanding that there was a playbook is critical. And then if we just fast track to the end of the story, so this is, we're a tech company. It feels embarrassing to say we've spent some AI automation budget on automating overtime and holiday forms. But as a quick side note, every team member now has real-time access to holidays. And we've got April is a holiday calendar with a tax year. So it was quite interesting yesterday. We had a flurry of holiday bookings. So the team were excitedly sat there like booking out their holiday for the rest of the year. And we were watching it real time, like excited. I was really pleased for Erin, because I just know there's a reason I delegated that task. And I know what Erin was given. And obviously, when you go to the fundamental of it, getting somebody's days owed, days taken, days booked for correct is critical. You can't. It's a statutory right. Do you know what I mean? So you can't get it wrong. So these little things that probably exist in most businesses can be automated away. And then, it's a review thing. So at the moment, we'll get onto this a bit more, because there's a confidence level as well with AI, isn't there? You don't just turn it on and walk away. You monitor and you question and you review. Like, the critical part is the review. So what it will do is it will take it from like a weekly task to a monthly task to a quarterly task to an always on total automation when it's got the confidence.
And that's why it's so important, like you were saying, Paul, to define clearly the success criteria beforehand. I mean, we know this, like with programming, you know what the output you want is. And that's why it's important to spend the time beforehand thinking, well, what do I want out of this? Because if you're fuzzy on that, then you won't know when you've got success, and you won't have that confidence and trust.
Yeah. So you're talking there about definition of done, aren't you? Taking the time in that planning step to say, well, what does done actually look like?
Yeah.
Everyone at the moment is muting outcomes, not hours. And I'm on that bandwagon completely. But often people don't actually document what the outcome actually is in a tangible way that you can give it a tick or a cross. It's like, I want to achieve X.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not even that. It's
too squidgy.
That's a bad example. It's like even more vague than that. It's like, I don't know. I'm going to say
but you can have like goals that like are admirable and worth doing, but like I want to, for example, with this specific situation, you'd say I want to streamline holiday planning, and that's almost that's a great goal, but it's almost nonsensical, isn't it? You need to be have clearly defined goals that you can work towards, and that when they're done, basically.
Yeah. So it's like it's to wrap it up. It's the why do we do this task? It's the how do we currently do it? I think it's really important to document your current process before you change it, because if you don't know what you currently do, you'll miss steps. And then it's also the definition of done. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it removed the project manager from the loop. And replaced, what is a weekly admin headache with the monthly review that will probably take, 5 minutes. And once there's a few monthly reviews done and the data is all correct, it won't be a monthly thing. So I think that nicely segues us on to their next example. So I'll give some context to this, if I may. So the second example is much more complex, and anybody in a service industry will be familiar with the client ticketing system. So we all know that email is a nightmare when you're trying to run it across a team, and there's loads of different solutions out there. Being totally transparent, we use one called Freshdesk. From our client's perspective, it's an email. They don't need to know Freshdesk exists. It's just a web portal that we use that gives access and visibility across the whole team, rather than doing it other ways. But again, being GGA, there's a big question mark over that at the moment. Like, is that the future? Can we streamline it further? So what happens in the world of software is there's this thing developers will call an undocumented feature, and there's a thing a client will call a bug. And also there's a stack of just queries. Like a lot of the software, it's not a brag at all, but a lot of software we build has been developed over decades. It's complex, it's large, and it's right that a client would say, how do I do this, when they only do it once a couple of years? So we get asked a lot of questions. We're not bug ridden, but we do get bug queries. And I was talking to the kids with absolutely no interest last night. I was trying to explain what you'd done, Kurt. And I'm sorry, Kurt, they don't...
Lost on them.
Everything was like, Kurt...
I won't take it personally. Yeah.
So I was explaining that the classic thing in software is a query comes in, let's call it a query or a question. And then what would traditionally happen, and I'll try and give some context to the old way. So what would traditionally happen is the support team pick it up, i.e. the project manager leads on it. So they need to regularly check it. And we have like a rule of like 3 times a day. Often Erin gets stuck in tickets because the classic thing of one ticket comes in, another one comes in. Then what would happen is she would do an initial triage. She would then, if she wasn't able to answer it, she needed developers' time. The way that we typically work is through a thing called Scrum and sprints. So we try and protect the developers' time. So then she would create a card for the next stand-up if it was non-urgent. At the stand-up, it would be discussed, and then a card created with as much detail as possible. Fundamentally, a developer needs to go and access that code base. They need to go and replicate the issue. They need to do a deep dive to find the issue or the answer to the query. They need to report that back to Erin. Erin needs to convert that back into, let's say, human language. And then the client gets informed. And that might just be question 1 of a 10-chain ultimate response. So that's our problem. Very time consuming, but worse than...
And it's the context switching as well, isn't it? You know, as along with the time.
Everything to everybody is always urgent. Like you try and get a client. We've got really, really good clients, the best clients we've ever had, but everything is priority urgent, isn't it? It doesn't really matter what the context is. And then, but the biggest issue I find is when you put your customer service hat on is, I do want to get back to them ASAP. So if I'm talking about, yes, there's comms in between, but a week from the start of a ticket to its resolution, you know, we have an SLA, which is in terms of just response. We'll acknowledge and we'll, you know, action, but we can't guarantee a resolution until we know what every bug is different or every query is different. So to wrap a long story short, we've seen some tickets be open for a week, which is just, it's not great for anyone, is it? It's not great for our team from a morale thing in terms of this is a particularly challenging thing. So given all that context, Kurt, what did we identify as like the key talking points we want to raise with the listeners? And then also, how did we go about trying to address this? I think that's the meat of this section.
Yeah. So again, this task fell into the pattern that you identified, which was that it's got a clearly defined success criteria. We know what we want to do. It's got logical rules that admittedly are sometimes complex, but they generally follow a pattern, and it's time consuming and boring. So it's an ideal candidate for automation. Now, not every task's like this. Some tasks aren't like this, but this one was a real, not a bottleneck, but it was like a friction point. And you can see those blisters developing just because of you rubbing up against the rough edges of something that, frankly, you don't need to do. Yeah. There's tools out there to solve it. So the overall goal was not taking the humans out of the loop, but kind of augmenting them and creating a way that reduces the time, reduces the context switching, reduces that friction to a manageable amount. Okay.
So if we look at the particular workflow that we've implemented to address that, what does that look like?
Yeah, sure. I'll rattle through. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, and we're very much in like I'd say like alpha stage. We're just like, you know, still hacking away at it and testing it. But it's again getting systems to talk to each other and getting workflows in place and agents in place to kind of do as much of this stuff for us ahead of the time. So I'll go through the kind of the way the workflow works. As I say, there's a few a few plates spinning, but in general, it's very simple what we're trying to do, which is trying to do what Erin and developers were doing, but in an automated way as far as possible. So generally, like you mentioned, Paul, we'll have a ticket coming in Freshdesk. Now what happens is that goes to another mailbox as well, which is monitored by N8N, which is like an automation platform that we use for a lot of automations. So our self-hosted N8N on our own server monitors that email. It gets that email. It looks at all the details in the email. So it looks at the name of the person that sent it, the ticket, the description of what they're saying, everything that comes through on that email. And we intelligently kind of pull details out of that. We use LLMs to kind of refine it and pull it and parse it and, work out what's actually being said. That workflow then talks to Shortcut, which is another platform we use, which is basically like a Trello, like with a development and engineering
tool, isn't it? It's
exactly, yeah.
It's agile in our business, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's got an engineering kind of focus, but essentially it's just cards you're just dragging to do, done.
Monday.com, Trello, any of those.
Exactly, yeah.
Anything you're using to manage projects and tasks, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly the same as that. It's nothing special. So then that workflow talks to that and says, okay, look, has this query come in before? Is this a duplicate? Is it a new thing? And does what where you say like an upsert, it either updates it or creates it. A new card in Shortcut for us, which is where our projects live. And so we're looking at Shortcut all day, every day. So it creates that card, which is straight away great because we've immediately got visibility of it in our project management software. The good thing then that it does is it goes a bit further. So we're using Gemini for this as a model. It looks at the actual query and it triages it. And this is important because like a lot, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, Paul, but I'd say a lot of the stuff Erin deals with, she probably doesn't need to deal with. She needs to look at it to know that she doesn't need to look at it. But it's a lot of basic stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd equate a rubbish analogy, but an analogy of, Erin is the receptionist at A&E. That's what
yes.
you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've got to triage what people need immediate attention and what queries, don't.
Yeah, exactly. And you wouldn't go into A&E and, you've stubbed your toe and say, I want to go and see a heart surgeon and say, yes, Mr. Rose, come through,
Well, they would.
Come straight
Yeah.
Maybe for you, not for me. Yeah. Redditch hospitals are better than Reindeer, obviously. But yeah, it's that thing, it's that gatekeeper. But unfortunately, Erin's got to read it to find out that she doesn't need to read it, which obviously isn't ideal. So Gemini, which we're using now, kind of triages it and tries to intelligently look at it and say, what's the sentiment here? What's this user asking for? Is it urgent? And tries to kind of work out what to do with that ticket. So, for example, it might be a user comes in and says, I've forgotten my password. And that's obviously a basic thing. It knows that they've just got to reset it. It's not urgent. It's a real low-level thing, and it can triage it based on that. And next actions and response, it can draft a response to say, well, you need to click reset password or whatever, which Erin can then copy and paste and use as a draft. Or it can go to the next level. So another thing that we use heavily in our kind of workflows is Claude Code, which isn't important to know the real low level details, but essentially it's like a coding agent that works with computer code specifically for development workflows. And so we've got a Claude Code agent that Gemini can then talk to that Claude Code agent and say, go and check the code. Is there a problem with the password reset? And it goes and does a bunch of checks. It's a model that's built specifically for this. And then it'll report back on the shortcut card and say, I've looked, the password reset code hasn't been changed for 9 months. It's all working fine. X amount of users have used it. It all looks good. Or alternatively, oh yes, we've had elevated alerts across all our systems on this. This could be an issue. It might be this line here. Fix this, and it adds it again, importantly, to that shortcut card, which is the project management software.
It's a single source of all.
So it's a single source of truth, yeah. So everything's there. So you imagine now for this hypothetical ticket, we've got the initial thing to come in at 9 in the morning. User forgot the password. Gemini's triaged it, summarised the issue. It's kicked it over to Claude Code to investigate the code. That's come back. That's on there as a comment. You've got a suggested response for email for Erin when she looks at it, and you've got everything there. And in the space of a few minutes, all this is done, all this legwork. And of course, it might be all totally wrong. I might look at it and be like, oh no, that that's a misapprehension, or it's an assumption that shouldn't be there. But the point is to start, and you've got everything there. And theoretically, you could then just take that shortcut card and feed it into another agent and say, go and create a change request for that code, and do that work. And then straight away, you've got what would have been, I don't know how many steps going back and forth with Erin, going back and forth with the developer. It's all condensed into one shortcut card that's got all the context there. And, and Erin's day then can become from constantly chasing a tail, following up tickets, so she might just look at it once in the morning and see what the AI has brought in, look at the summaries, and obviously not taking the human out of the loop entirely, because, you're not just saying, agent take the wheel sort of thing, and then just walk off and just leave it running. Like that would be foolish, but like you're letting it help you as much as possible and augment what you're already doing, so you can do the things that you want to do and you're good at that an AI can't do.
I think there's so many things in that little, and I appreciate for the listener, this might be like bamboozling because it's like we're talking about lots of different things, but I think it's things like an automation in 2026 right now involves multiple LLMs. There's not one single thing that's best for, there's no best fit for, we're not just saying, we did one prompt and it solved the problem. We're talking about connected services, and we're talking about using the right LLM at the right time to create context, which then we pipe through an X, Y, and Z. And then also, I think going back to your definition of done scenario that we talked about, like the why do we need to do this? Like, is it something we can eliminate? No. Is it something we can automate? Yes. What does done look like? In order to get something that provided value to us and a win, we didn't go for the full roadmap. We probably came up with like 20 things this thing could do. The secret to automation is to get one win, like as part of that roadmap. So in its first success was just creating a shortcut card. This didn't start as being like draft replies or anything like that. It was almost like
it's just MVP. Yeah,
task. Like there's a task here that's taking time. Okay, now let's do the triage bit. So it's iterative, it's agile. It's not spend 6 months on this, Kurt. This was like, how long did it take you to build out? Would you estimate the entire workflow as to where?
I don't know. I'd say still possibly not finished yet, but like, but there's still things we want to work on with it. But Yeah. But I mean, like, maybe like an afternoon, half a day or something to get the basic stuff in.
I haven't prompted you there, have I? That is genuinely.
Yeah. It can be pretty quick once you've clearly defined it and planned it all out. It honestly doesn't take that long, because we're experienced with connecting all these different systems for other things, aren't we?
The next part of this then is, so like Kurt said, it's not finished. Like I look at it and I go, it's amazing, roll it out. Kurt is very skeptical and he's like not finished and all this sort of stuff. So I would say launch the MVP, monitor like closely. And that probably creates more admin in those early days than actually just doing the ticket. This is where you have to do a trade-off. You have to go, if I just answered that ticket, it'll take me 1 minute. I'm spending 10 minutes doing all the analysis to make sure it's correct. But the payoff is downstream, if that makes sense, and you do less review as you go forward. But what was really interesting was we got a demo of it. While we were doing a demo, a live ticket came in. We could see all the actions, all the thing. And then because it's operational, then we go, how can we make this 1% better? And that's when we got onto the reply. So me and Erin attended a customer service course probably about 6 months ago. And what we've been trying to do in our tickets is apply like a simple methodology, really simple of pretty much this is how you can fix it yourself right now because it's an issue. And this is like a longer term solution. And we just said to Kurt, we've got it to this point. How could we do this? And now we've got it drafting reply. So we haven't got to the level of trust right now where I'm happy for it to reply to the client, but I am very happy for it to suggest the response. And it is unbelievable how really good that is. So it's like often with a password reset thing, for instance, it's duplicate queries. It's like you said, it's got context, it's got memory. I'd say 80% of all the tickets we get are repeaters.
Yeah.
There's something like we had one yesterday and Erin from her memory knew that she'd seen this in the last 6 months and it was a repeater. well, the AI will pick that up as well as it starts to build its knowledge. So it'll respond differently as well. But there's ultimately 9 times out of 10, there's something a client can do that is just a change to how they're using the system. That means that that blocker is gone. It's rare that there's something genuinely blocked by a bug in the code. That's extremely rare. So we'll give them a quick fix. We call it a hack. And we literally label that in the response like, here's something you can do yourself right now. That means you can continue with your workflow. And then we give them the proper fix. So internally on the shortcut card, it's like you said, it's identified offending code. It won't just...
why it's happened.
Yeah, why it's happened. It'll link it to error monitoring in Sentry. So we have like error tracking real time. It'll link it to suggested, remediations, but also the tests that would go in and things like this to then bulletproof it and stop it happening again. So the whole thing is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, and I think as well the important takeaway, like what we've been experimenting with recently is doing like custom bespoke stuff, because like there's the companies out there like the 10 a penny who can install a chatbot on your website that'll be like an AI chatbot who you can talk to for support and stuff, and everyone's doing this like because it's the way things are going with customer service. But those services which you'll pay for are generic, they're cookie cutter, aren't they? And that wouldn't work for our usage because we need to talk to the code, because we need to, have history and stuff. So we've ended up building small agents that do one thing very well and then linking those together to work for us. And obviously, if we wanted to change it, if we, like, say we're using Sentry, say tomorrow we change from Sentry to something else, we can swap that out because it's custom software. And that's a lot of, like the clients we're working with automations is like, they need something that isn't off the shelf, or they need something that's bespoke and customizable, and that used to be difficult like back in the day, but like now it's a lot easier to do, to make it exactly what you need. And you say, well, I want it to do this slightly different, and we can do that now, which is what we've done with Proven, and I'm sure this will evolve even more so. But like it's about making it do what you want it to do and to fit your systems, isn't it? Which is something that's quite easy to do now, which wasn't always before.
Yeah. And I think you're leaning again into that scenario that we've talked about many, many times over, that what used to be hard is now medium, and what is medium is easy, and easy should be eliminated. So it's kind of like, I just think this, what I really like about this conversation, I really appreciate that Sean's not here. He's not here because he's not well, but it is an opportunity to say, okay, let's do some of the more in-depth conversations about how we've been using it internally and stuff. So I think we're not pressing go on the full automation yet. Do you know, I mean, I know why I'm not doing it and saying it, but what's your take on that? Like, why not press go on the full automation right now?
Yeah, I mean, like, talk to other people. I sound fairly bullish on AI and stuff, and very like forward thinking, but I really don't trust it. And like, it's got a lot better. It's always getting better, but like, I've seen it hallucinate stuff. I've seen it do stuff, and I just feel an uncomfortable level of autonomy to just say, yeah, go ahead, do what you want. They call it like YOLO mode, don't they, with like vibe coding and stuff. Like I can't do that, because like I'm just like, I get nervous and I like to see what it's doing. I like to accept stuff. I'm a bit of a control freak in that way. So I don't want to just completely hand over the wheel and say, go for it and then go make a coffee.
You won't be installing Claudebot on your Mac.
No, certainly not. That's a separate conversation. But yeah, so like I've got my own comfort level, which everyone's got their own different comfort level, and so like I like it to do the work, but for a human to like oversee it and to have a final say in it. And I think as much as it can do until that point, which is actually quite a lot when you think about it, it is great. But like I'd like to have a human in the loop to be that reviewer, and that like, kind of manager and orchestrator really. And so like as much as the legwork we can get to before there, which is a substantial amount, is great, and then we can whack all that there and let the AIs help us and let the robots talk to each other, and then just come in at the last step and be like, okay, is this okay? Do I need to put my hand on the scale a little bit here, change things? Do I need to direct it in a different direction and whatever? And I think that's like the ideal level of like management and autonomy, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I love that phrase, human in the loop, because that's exactly it. I think what I'd like to touch on now, I mean, there's two things. So the first one is just, we won't go into these because of time, but I know on previous things I've talked about sales processes. So like we've built out an entirely automated, it is fully automated sales process that means pre-call plans for meetings follow a certain framework. Once the meeting is transcribed, like we were talking about with Rob's question earlier, it then preempts the next one. It then creates the presentation. It can even go as far as estimating. So we've got like a sales process that's about 6 or 7 agents. And one thing you touched on is the way to do this properly is like single responsibility agents, isn't it? And then you connect them. So you go, your job is this one thing and do it really well. I find identifying errors in AI a lot easier when you have an agent that just does one thing.
More testable. Yeah.
Spot it. It's so much easier. And then the other thing we're working on is obviously more to do with releasing code. But again, Kurt, you identified that when we do a release, even though the action of transporting the code base from GitHub to a server on AWS or DigitalOcean or wherever is automated, we still have a lot of manual checklists to go through, a bit like the pilot flying the plane. We have to check that all these things are working and operational. We're looking at automating that, and you've been working on that in the past week just to say, can that be automated? So again, the review is, okay, it's done all these checks. We can go and do some confidence checks, but fundamentally, there's still admin tasks that sit around automation itself that we're doing. And it's like, why are we doing it? And is there a need and things like this? So I think there's 2 things I want to touch on now. At the very start of this conversation, you talked about being with GGA for like 5 years, and obviously been a massive asset to the team as well in those 5 years. You've seen a lot of changes. My first question is, how are you seeing the role of the developer change compared to when you joined the company 5 years ago? Like, what does your day-to-day look like? And is there any change as an impact of AI? And secondly, how are you finding the time for all of this automation work?
I'm not finding the time is the answer. The second one, but it's not enough time. But in answer to the first question, dramatically, and I mean it's a big subject by itself, and online, like I read a lot of stuff, and there's sort of almost like a grieving process a lot of developers going through, because it's something that they've worked hard as a craft to develop. I mean, you think of something like being a carpenter or something that involves like a skill. You've worked hard to develop that skill over years and years, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this machine can do a lot of those things you could do before. But it's involved, for me at least personally, is like a role shift. So I enjoy coding. I love coding, and I enjoy the act of typing the code and actually getting into the weeds and solving problems with code. But I feel like now my role's transferred from being like first violin in an orchestra, which is fun, and then I enjoy playing the instrument, but you're going from that to being the conductor, and you're conducting several violinists, and then it might be a bigger orchestra of lots of different responsibilities. And of course that involves a mental shift of thinking about the higher level stuff, but that's skills that we've developed as developers over years anyway, because we've got that higher level knowledge of things, and we know how things work together, and we've got experience of architecting systems. So it's a different level of thinking, and it might not be as fun as it used to be, coding, but you can accomplish so much more, so much quicker. And stuff that you think, well, I could write that myself over a weekend, but it's not worth the time, now becomes like, oh, I might as well, because I've got this army of coders at my disposal, so to speak. So it's really exciting times in that respect, because the cost of software, of writing software, has come down, but the need for software has gone up, because more people are using software and more people need properly architected software. And so software is going to be more proliferated and more people are going to be using it, but it's going to reinforce the need for good software and software that works well together. So I'm still kind of passing through what it means day to day. And I'd love to have a crystal ball to see like 5 years in the future, see what we're using. But workflows day to day have changed dramatically. And it's changing every single week. There's a new release or new something. But it's an exciting time, because I don't think software goes away. I think it becomes more important. It becomes a fabric of our life going forward, because there'll be more of it about.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's there's so many things. Again, I got my little post-it in front of me. I've written down some things. So you talked about parallel. So do you want to you want to give an insight into that? Like, because that's never been a time before. You talked about context switching previously.
Yeah.
You talked about parallel development. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to like go, I don't know how far to go into like the technical details, but like, for example,
an overview for the lane.
Yeah.
Like without knowing anything about development, you used to
a
single project and you at one time.
Of course, yeah, because that's like by necessity. We can only really focus on one thing at a time now. Like we touched on Claude Code before, which is basically like a chat agent that works in a terminal and is designed specifically for that purpose for working with code. So a terminal is just like the text prompt that programmers use on like on a computer to talk to the computer directly instead of clicking windows and buttons. It's like just text, which is great for an LLM. So Claude Code's got a load of useful features, but one thing you can do is you can work on different like projects or Git work trees at the same time. So you can work on multiple things from multiple different angles simultaneously. And theoretically, there's no limit to how many you could do. So you could have 10 running, competing with each other at a given time. And there's been some new updates to Claude Code where it'll spin up an agent team for you, and it'll send one person off looking up the docs for it, one person looking at the front end aspect, one person looking at the server, and then they'll all talk to like a team lead who you're controlling. You can message all of them and steer them in a different direction, or say, no, I don't want to do that, and they're all talking to each other, and it's crazy how much parallel work you can do. But that's also got a cognitive cost as well, because sometimes you'll feel tired after doing that, because you're just mentally drained of like this is really powerful, but because you can do anything, it's like you kind of draining yourself mentally by managing all those. So you got to be careful. It's really exciting times because the cost of doing it isn't speed anymore. Because before you need like 2 or 3 more developers to do that. Now that isn't the cost. So the costs come in other places like quality or the cognitive load of it. And so it's just balancing, and it changes the equation essentially. But exciting things you can do with code now.
Yeah, I think again, like my head's spinning, but the cost thing's interesting, because I think you mentioned the cost isn't speed anymore. I think the cost, if I can do it justice, is actually completing stuff. I see so many people who, because they can, they do, but they never launch. They never get anything to market. Or I'm not talking about an MVP. I'm just on about they start a chat in Gemini or whatever, and they're really excited about an initiative they can launch in the business or a marketing strategy, but it never gets off the ground because they're then context switching on something else. I'm excited about that. And I think shiny object syndrome is even more prevalent today than ever before, because there's so many things you could get involved in. It's really hard to focus. And I think the people who win with AI will be the ones who identify that they're an architect, use their experience from whatever industry to prompt it, to give it context, to then produce something that genuinely helps other people and solve a problem. Because that's all we ever want is, value is ultimately exchange, isn't it? Between, problems and solutions are one thing. The second thing you touched on that was quite interesting is it made me smile is you said about you send a person off a person to go and do talking agents, not people.
It's anthropomorphizing.
There's quite a few people I know who are now seriously looking at buying a couple of like £10,000 Mac studios to run me, so that they can have these agentic teams, and they can have 10 to 20 parallel projects being developed at the same time. I mean,
that's the way things are going, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, it's AI computing power. A lot of what you've touched on as well will come up in the news section in a moment, so that's a really good segue. Just a few more things off my post-it. I was watching Cadbury's talk about a cream egg the other day whilst eating a cream egg with Nikki, and it was fascinating because every other industry seems to have gone through this change. And it's tech that's suddenly vulnerable. And like you said, you go through a grieving process. So in the Cadbury's documentary, it's totally automated machinery that's producing millions of cream eggs a day or whatever it is. And the guy makes a point of saying this factory used to have 200 people and it now takes 4 people. Not the whole factory, but like this department or whatever. It would have 200 manual workers. And there was automation in place, but now 4 people oversee it. And then literally the guy was just looking at a screen of like green, like almost like the national grid of like, is it operational? And the humans are sent in to fix when the machine breaks down. And I can't help but think that's exactly what tech's going through right now. Tech's had a really solid, expansive kind of every year, Moore's law, technology gets better, doubles the computing power. And then for the first time, we're facing redundancy and replacement. So we have to step up to be the architect. And then they have, go on.
Yeah, as well. On my optimistic days, on some of the optimistic days, I think of it like farming. As like not long ago, it took a lot of people to do farming, didn't it? And then you've got now tractors and fertilizer and things, and it means that there's still farmers. Of course, still farmers, but there's fewer of them, and their job has changed, hasn't it? And I think before we used to using the hoe and the plough and doing it manually, like me and you both done that, Paul. And now we're like, there's this new thing called a tractor where you can do the job of 5 developers at the same time.
Look at it.
But you still need to know how farming works, don't you, and stuff, So.
I caught myself yesterday talking to somebody at a meeting, and I used the word, we used to like handcraft code. And I thought, how bloody, how arrogant of you. Like, you're still using a machine. Yeah. All it is.
Oh, it's true,
better. But and then the final thing is, like you've talked about on that thing is, we've seen a massive shift. There's no doubt between, your classic software development projects coming in and consultancy. And this goes back to the architect. And then ultimately it goes back to AI is still the hammer. So the hammer's got better, and it's like the best hammer in the world that we've currently got, and it'll get better next.
More dangerous.
And more dangerous. It's like Thor's hammer right now, probably.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, who wields it depends on the results you get. So it's through our experience of releasing large enterprise production grade code that we know how to prompt it and give it context for the things that you wouldn't necessarily ask.
And knowing what questions to ask as well, isn't it?
So like in your conductor analogy, if I stood up there with the exact same conducting bow, I wouldn't have a clue. Whereas somebody who's been a conductor knows exactly how to orchestrate. And I think we have to rely on those principles right here, right now, because 80% is being done by AI, and Claude Code, which we'll talk about next in the news section, is just the best thing ever to code. And it's in my opinion, like decimating code. It's like, it's just replacing that task. So that's gone. Okay. So to wrap up, Kurt, that's been brilliant. We'll do the news section. Just one quick thing in terms of how you're finding time. Obviously, I didn't plant you, but what I was thinking of is we're finishing work quicker. So we're suddenly finding time in our day to have these questions and to go, well, actually, what do we give the team next? And that's where the automation things come from. We've talked for a long time about optimizing processes, but I think because we're doing things more efficiently and faster than ever before, it's creating a natural gap in our sprints, because the velocity we're measured against is the old school, if that makes sense. So that's one thing. So if we talk about news, this will be really quick. We've got with the news section, we get 3 stories, and it's just to give insight into what's happening in the landscape. We've gone through, we've tried to find 3 relevant stories to what we've talked about today. And obviously with Kurt sat opposite me, we aren't just reading the headlines, we're code reviewing them. So we're going to start with the news that the government, the UK government, which is where we're based, has announced a massive expansion of its free AI training for all. And so the goal is to get 10 million workers upskilled by 2030. Now, this is like a partnership with some of the biggest tech companies, banking companies, like institutions in the UK. But it's really leaning into the fact that there's going to be a skills gap between those who know how to use AI and those who don't. Personally, I would question whether 2030 is the right time scale, because I would...
Quite a long time scale.
I would say in the world of AI... No, I don't think anybody can predict where we're going to be in 2030. And I would have thought if you need 10 million workers upskilled in AI, it's being the negative. I think that timescale is ridiculous. You kind of need to say in the next 2 years maximum. But that's my. It's not a political comment. It's just looking at what's happened and Moore's law and stuff. But what's your take on that, Kurt?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I've got obviously probably a more controversial view as usual, but I think certification and stuff is it's almost it's almost too slow, isn't it? You know, like it'll be out of date by the time you finish the course running. The way things are going now, and I'm sure all things will level out eventually. But at the moment, I think the most important thing is showing stuff that works and, you know, experimenting and playing with it, which maybe that's like a more awareness thing. But I suppose it's a step in the right direction. But it's changing all the time. I mean, I've had the challenge with my I've got 6-year-old twin girls, and like I've been showing them Nano Banana, like an image generation LLM, and like Claude and stuff, and showing how it works. I'm trying to give them some kind of AI literacy, because I mean the job they're going to do probably doesn't even exist yet. You know,
yeah.
You've got to educate people on it, but at the same time, like how do you do that when the landscape's changing all the time?
Yeah. I think I'm not going to get into a rant. We don't have enough time. But I think the school system has to change. Now, my son's doing GCSEs, and using AI is frowned upon and not encouraged. And it's kind of, I get why, but knowledge as it exists, it used to be the currency, wasn't it? The people with the most knowledge used to be the most well paid in certain industries. And that's decimated like coding is. It's like, doesn't, you know, I can ask any question. I've got to be able to know whether it's factual, research it. But I think the basic tools of, if it's about engineering, if it's about ethics and, you know, basic automation, then 100% welcome it. But like you've just said, the tooling we're using today, we won't be using in 6 months. We just won't be using the same tools or the same even mindset, because it's going on so far. So, and 10 million workers over the next 4 years is, I actually, to be fair to the to be fair to the government, I thought 2030 was miles away. It's actually 4 years away, so it's not that ridiculous. But 2.5 million workers a year, isn't it?
The question is, and this is where I'm lacking, where Sean would be far better guest than I am today, but like from your perspective, Paul, as like an employer, what would you be looking at really like over the next few years when it comes to interviewing people with AI and stuff, you know?
So, I mean, I said this the other day, I said it on a previous episode. Sean did a brilliant episode on recruitment and AI, and we kind of laughed about it, but it's definitely the truth, is that, you know, the CV, if that's still the process that gets submitted, is going to be AI generated. And it's going to get reviewed by an AI agent to sift through it. So you're going to have AI recruiting people where there will be jobs. So my whole take on the recruitment thing is one of distrust. Unfortunately, like it used to be a case that if you were getting an application or even an interview with somebody, you kind of took it at face value a little bit. Your job was to obviously sound it out. I think there's so much of a trust gap at the moment between anything. Like people are putting up LinkedIn posts that are genuinely written by humans and getting chastised for being AI slop. Nobody can tell the difference. And I think it won't be long till you have AI video interviewing where your agent goes on and answers the questions that you would answer it. It's like, it's ridiculous. The only way you can do it is face to face. But jobs that are like remote, that how do you know? How on earth do you know? And I'm not talking about today's technology. I'm talking about in the next few years. So yeah, to go on off a subject, I think if I'm looking for to recruit somebody now, I want them to be the best in the world at AI adoption. So prove to me, like, show me the things that you.
And that's not a certificate from the government. That's showing real world projects, isn't it?
We've always hired on attitude, not skills. Like when you came to us as a developer, you know, you'd self-invested in a Ruby on Rails course, and you dedicated your time to learning that craft, and that shined for me above every other applicant who was like telling us it was great for gaming. Didn't even know it. So it's always attitude, and I think it's also the mindset of like how AI is used. I think not many people are really applying the conductor analogy. They're in a fear scape. Some of them are ostriches. They're just burying their head in the sand, hoping it's a bubble that'll burst and go away. I mean, the next story we can go on to will kind of provide some evidence that potentially it's not the bubble that everyone thinks it is. So, and then we'll go on to Claude after that. So the $630 billion gamble, and I don't know.
It's a B.
B
billion.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it as a gamble really, but this is on Fortune, and we'll put all the news story links on the show notes. But basically, AI only exists on AI infrastructure, computing power. without computing power, AI is dead. And there's lots of ways you can tackle that. But effectively, what this story is about is Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta are all projected to spend in their CapEx in this year alone $630 billion combined, which has been reported as the same GDP of Sweden.
That's crazy.
And that's all just to build servers. So I think fundamentally with this news story, you need to go, why are the smartest, largest tech companies in the world investing so much money? And it's an obscene amount that they've never invested before. It's not going anywhere, is it? I don't think. No. I think it just shows the direction of travel. It shows the...
it's where they're putting their chips, isn't it, basically, on the table,
exactly,
isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's an arms race, is the other way to look at it. I mean, what was your take on it when you read the article, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, it's just those kind of money, those amounts of money just like stop meaning anything, don't they? At that point, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like I can't even think of that type of money, but at the same time, it gives me confidence in, see, the pessimistic side of me is like, oh, everyone's going to lose their job. No office workers going to have a job. But then these AI companies are asking us to pay, frankly, quite expensive subscriptions, aren't they, for their services, which cost money, which needs to be earned by a job. And it's like a cyclical kind of thing, isn't it? So like, there's still money being in the economy, and whether it's in server farms or whether it's doing stuff for AI stuff, it's the economy still ticking over. It's creating new work is a good way of thinking of it. There's still money out there because they wouldn't spend that money if everyone's going to lose their jobs, would they?
And obviously, like, in a previous podcast, me and Sean talked about infrastructure and like building on Greenbelt and like kind of it's AI infrastructure at the moment seems to have precedence over housing in London. It's just insane. I mean, it dwarfs. I mean, I know these are huge tech companies, but we've got the UK government, and I think in that report, apologies if I misquoted, but I'm sure it said they're investing 27 million in the upskilling of 10 million workers. It's nothing.
It's a drop in the ocean, isn't it? Yeah.
So that's a government versus, obviously, it's private investment and private companies, but public actually. But it's mad.
It brought back to my mind. I mean, I like reading a lot of history and stuff, and like when they're building the railways in this country and stuff, it's just breakneck pace, and suddenly everywhere's got railways. Everyone's building railways, something that didn't exist before. It's crazy.
I think in that railways thing, there'll be a few visionaries who could see it, but I don't think anybody would at that time when they were laying the first tracks. I don't think anybody would envisage how it actually works today. Like where it would go, like the ultimate, and we're not even at the end game, are we? Like at the end of the day, but if you go from, I'm terrible at history, you'll have to correct me, but I assume in the American US railroad, connecting east to west, the frontier founders or whatever, when they were doing that and they were investing, I know a lot of people made a lot of money on it. They were just interested in connecting A and B.
Sure.
Well, they weren't thinking of Japan and the bullet train and the speeds and the efficiency and stuff. So it's like, is AI are we laying the first tracks of the railroad? And we have no comprehension of where this is going to be. And we're not talking about 200 years. We're talking about 20 years, or we're talking
absolutely, I mean, that's why I think about, like, again, thinking about like my kids, like, are they going to be railway conductors and train drivers and stuff? And I mean, there's 600 billion worth of railways being laid. So where does that lead?
Yeah. Oh man, you're getting me depressed. Let's be optimistic. Okay. So the final story. This is the one I've saved to last, because I think if you can give context to this in terms of just for the wider listener and like the non-techie, but this week Anthropic released Claude Opus 4.6. Okay. So to anyone else in the world, it's just a version number and it's just Claude. So from your perspective, what does this mean for our industry, and what does it mean for the wider population?
Yeah, it's huge, really. I mean, like, there's so many model releases now, and all the companies do it at the same time. So OpenAI released, I think it's 5.2 as well, same like weekend and stuff. And there's a lot of it, but like they tend to be like incremental, like just tiny revisions, or it's hard to benchmark these things. But from anecdotal experience, 4.6 seems head and shoulders above everything else. It's really good at coding. It's got a really good it's hard to, it sounds silly talking about it in human terms, but it's got like the way it is. It's like kind of personality is kind of better for that kind of thing. It's like knows when to stop and when to go further, and it seems really intuitive to use, and it's perfect for Claude Code, which it's obviously designed for. And it kind of reasons on stuff and goes away and does its own research. So it's a real leap forward, to be honest. And they're kind of refining stuff to do the fast things fast, take the time when they need to. It's just a really, really good all-round model, just based on like the vibes I've been getting. And it's broke a lot of like benchmark scores and stuff. They do a lot of tests online. But honestly, like everything's kind of converging now, and it's becoming like the models that there used to be a big difference between them, but now it's like they're pretty similar, like benchmarks on most of them. It's just a few points difference, and so you wonder where it's all going, whether it's going to be just all converged to like they're all pretty much the same. And you know, almost like cars, you just choose which one you like.
Hey, is Claude for the developer like the Ferrari, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And then for the non-techies listening, you've talked about, it's chasing reasoning. Why does that matter? Why does that distinction between the old Claude and the new Claude matter?
Yeah, sure. So like reasoning models are better because they'll kind of, essentially it's just a loop really, but like you'll ask it a question like, I'm trying to think of an example now, but like, why should I do X this way? And it might give the default answer, which back a year or two ago would have just been like the instant answer. But now it kind of questions itself. So it says, well, the user's asking this. This is what I know about Kurt. This is what I know about the situation. Is this the best in this circumstance? It might do a web search to look up the docs. It might look at the code base, go back and say, actually, wait, what Kurt's asking is this. So in this context, I need to offer this alternative. And it'll sort of think about stuff. And that's what 4.6 is good at. It's not other models have been thinking before, but it reasons really deeply on stuff, and it draws in other things, and it sends off other like agents to retrieve information for it. And it just results in an all-round better, more rounded answer. Obviously, the trade-off is it takes longer. It might take a couple of minutes to think about it, and the tokens cost more, and it costs more usage. But overall, for something like coding, it's gold because it just gives you a really, really educated answer. Yeah.
The quality and the quality.
Essentially, yeah.
And then it's been talked about that context awareness is ultimately moving from like an AI assistant to an actual AI engineer. So it's less about the typing speed, like you said, and it's more about not breaking things and reasoning. And you see it if you use Gemini and you expand it or Manus again, it'll tell you what it's trying to do. Like it's minimized by standard, and that's happening in the coding space now, which it hasn't ever happened before, has it?
Yes, exactly.
You give it an instruction, it executes the instruction. And then you run it to see if it's broken.
Exactly.
Like 2 years ago coding.
Yeah, and like now as well, like the way the models are, and like as I say, I'm very cautious. I'm just like these clankers taking our jobs sort of thing. But like at the same time, like I'm like for Opus is like you can almost have a conversation with it, and so like I'll quite often say, well, we've got this task to do. I've got this idea. Give me the trade-offs, pros and cons of each. And then it'll be like, have you considered this? I'm like, yes, but not because of this. And it's like having a conversation with another engineer. Yeah. And of course, there's awareness that it is just a robot, but like at the same time, I feel like I can have a natural back and forth conversation. And especially if you're using stuff like you talked about Whisper Pro and stuff with actual voice instead, it becomes a totally different experience. And that just didn't exist for previous models.
Yeah. Again, two things go off in my head. Like I love talking this sort of stuff, but like one is, I know a good friend of mine, Ash, he uses Cursor and he uses Claude. His background security, but he doesn't type any code in. He just talks through Whisper. I haven't written any code or typed anything into Claude for months now. It's all through Whisper or Granola. And so, the last thing you just said as well finally reminded me, I won't disclose names and stuff, but we're working with another software development company, and they have tens of developers in a team, and they're working with us to kind of understand our adoption at software engineering level. And the way that we've been describing it to is, well, if you had a team of, say, 50 engineers, when you implement AI, it's the equivalent of 100 engineers, for the simple fact that you've got like this senior developer sat on your shoulder. So you can literally ask it questions. So instead of turning to the person next to you and saying, how does this work? Exactly what you were just saying. And it's that we've almost
force multiplier, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a developer as well who doesn't care how many times you ask the same dumb question.
Yeah.
How many times you say, like, do it another way, do it another way, do it another way. It's just indefatigable, isn't it? You know,
so that's amazing. So I think we'll wrap up there. So we've covered a lot today, Kurt. Thank you so much for kind of being open and communicative about what we've been doing.
No problem. It's been a good chat.
Yeah, really good. So we've looked at how MCPs are bridging the gap between your data. We've looked at the tension between quick hacks and a proper fix and automation. And we've heard that, Kurt, you know, from yourself, Kurt, that from now at least, developers are still very much needed to stop the robots from hallucinating. If you want to know more about specific M8M workflows we've mentioned, drop us a message. We're genuinely prepared to give away the farm and show you how the blueprints work. Because we believe understanding how this works is the only way to stop fearing it. Sean, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be back next week and fully rebooted and bug fixed. So Kurt, thanks again for stepping in. Listeners, thank you for your time, and don't forget to submit any listener questions. I've been Paul Rhodes from Green Gorilla Automation, and you've been listening to Ctrl-Alt-Dev.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.